I still remember that exact sentence. If you don't give that NBA rookie card collection to your cousin, then don't ever call me Grandpa again. I didn't scream or argue. I just stayed perfectly still. That silence wasn't surrender. It was the exact moment before I decided to change the rules of our family forever. My name is Naomi. As a single mother, I have spent the last decade working 60-hour weeks to build a secure life for my 8-year-old son, while silently acting as the primary financial safety net for my own parents and my older sister. I paid their rent, covered their car loans, and funded their comfortable lifestyles because I foolishly believed my endless financial sacrifices would guarantee their unconditional love for my boy. I thought I was buying family harmony, but I was merely funding their entitlement right up until the night my own father weaponized his affection to break my son's heart. Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about toxic relatives who assume they can manipulate a child to get whatever they want, and the absolute nuclear fallout they face when a mother finally snaps. If you enjoy stories about setting unbreakable boundaries and cutting off entitled family members, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's begin. The sky over suburban Portland that day was slate gray, a thick fog coating the windshield as I pulled my car into the driveway of my parents' house to pick up Tristan. Usually, my son would burst through the front door like a miniature tornado, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder, already mid-sentence about a basketball game he had watched. This time, the heavy oak door opened slowly. Tristan walked down the concrete front steps with his head bowed, clutching his backpack tightly against his chest like a physical shield. He climbed into the passenger seat and pulled the door shut with a soft, lifeless thud. I smiled, reaching over to playfully ruffle his hair, but he leaned slightly toward the window, pulling away from my touch. That was the very first alarm bell. "Did you have a good weekend, sweetie?" I asked, keeping my tone light and conversational. He gave a single mechanical nod without ever looking in my direction. Normally, the very next thing Tristan would do is reach for the dashboard console and beg me to switch the radio to the local sports broadcasting channel so we could listen to the NBA weekend recaps. My hand hovered over the dial, ready to turn it on for him. "Do you want to hear the game scores?" I offered. Tristan stared blankly out the passenger window at the passing pine trees. "No, thank you," he whispered, his voice incredibly small. "Can we just keep it quiet?" The 20-minute drive back to our house was suffocating. The silence in the vehicle was not the peaceful quiet of a sleepy child returning from a fun trip. It was a heavy, anxious stillness that made the air feel incredibly thick and hard to breathe. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His small hands were gripping the denim fabric of his jeans so fiercely that his knuckles were turning stark white. When we finally pulled into our garage and the engine cut off, I expected him to immediately unbuckle and hop out. Instead, Tristan remained completely frozen in his seat. He just sat there, staring straight ahead at the brick wall, his hands now gripping the edge of the leather seat cushion. I had to lean over the center console and press the red seatbelt release button for him. The sharp click seemed deafening in the confined, quiet space. Hoping that a familiar routine would break whatever dark spell he was currently under, I spent the following hour cooking his absolute favorite Sunday dinner. I made baked macaroni and cheese with grilled chicken, the comfort food that usually guaranteed a massive grin and a demand for a second helping. I carefully set the steaming plate in front of him at the kitchen table. Tristan picked up his fork and simply pushed the noodles around the porcelain plate in slow, deliberate circles. He did not take a single bite. The dining room felt like a vacuum, slowly draining all the oxygen from my lungs. I sat directly across from him, helplessly watching my vibrant, energetic 8-year-old boy shrink into a hollow shell of himself. After 10 minutes of torturous silence, he carefully placed his fork down beside his untouched meal. "Mom," he said, his lower lip trembling slightly. "May I please be excused to go to my room? I am not really hungry tonight." He did not wait for my response. He slid off his dining chair, keeping his eyes firmly fixed on the hardwood floor, and walked slowly down the hallway. The soft click of his bedroom door shutting sounded incredibly final. It left me sitting completely alone at the table with a cold plate and a terrifying realization. My son was not just exhausted from a busy weekend, he was deeply, profoundly traumatized, and a sickening feeling in my stomach told me that my own family was responsible. A pale yellow light spilled from the crack of the living room door, casting a long streak across the cold hardwood floor of the hallway at midnight. I woke up to a sound so faint it almost blended in with the winter wind rattling the window panes. It was the sharp, distinct noise of packing tape being ripped from a roll. I slipped out of bed, pulling my robe tight against the chill, and followed the noise. It was not coming from the living room, but from Tristan's bedroom. His door was pushed open just an inch. I peered inside and felt my breath catch in my throat. My son was sitting cross-legged on the center rug, surrounded by his most prized possessions. His NBA rookie card collection, the investment we had spent years slowly building together with my leftover overtime pay. The items, carefully preserved in thick acrylic cases, were scattered all around him. Next to his knees sat a crumpled, repurposed cardboard box. Tristan was crying. Silent, heavy tears streamed down his flushed cheeks and soaked the collar of his cotton pajamas. With shaking fingers, he was prying open the hard plastic shells, removing the pristine cards and placing them directly into the cheap cardboard box. I pushed the door open completely and dropped to my knees beside him. "Sweetie, what are you doing?" I asked, keeping my voice as gentle as possible so I would not startle him. He froze. His tear-filled eyes darted up to meet mine, looking like a trapped animal. His lower lip quivered uncontrollably before his entire face crumpled. "I am packing them for Jude," he whispered, his voice cracking, "for his birthday tomorrow." I stared at the cardboard box, my mind struggling to process the visual. Tristan cherished those cards more than anything in the world. They were not just pieces of glossy cardboard to him. They were our shared bond, his passion, his little treasure trove. "Why are you giving your entire collection away?" I asked softly, reaching out to wipe a warm tear from his chin. "You love these." "I have to." He sobbed, his small shoulders shaking violently now. "Grandpa Eric told me I have to." My blood ran ice cold at the mention of my father's name. "What exactly did Grandpa say to you?" Tristan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to hold back a fresh wave of tears. "He said Jude does not have any expensive toys like I do. He said it is not fair. He told me that if I do not give Jude my cards tomorrow, I am a selfish brat. And..." He choked on a loud sob, struggling to push the final devastating words out of his mouth. "He said if I refuse, I am never allowed to call him Grandpa again. He said he will not want to be my family anymore." Hearing those exact words fall from the lips of my innocent boy felt like a physical blow to the chest. My heart violently constricted. The air was entirely sucked out of the room. In that devastating moment, an overwhelming wave of guilt crushed me. I had left him there all weekend. I had driven him to that house, kissed his forehead, and happily left him in their care. For years, I had worked myself to the bone, taking on extra shifts, continuously transferring money to their bank accounts, and funding their lives because I foolishly believed that keeping them comfortable meant they would shower my son with love. I was completely wrong. I had not bought a supportive village for my boy. I had actively thrown my own child into a lion's den, leaving him at the mercy of people who viewed his love as a cheap bargaining chip. I pulled Tristan into my chest, wrapping my arms tightly around his shaking frame to comfort him. As I held my broken child on the bedroom floor, the crushing weight of my guilt began to burn away. It was instantly replaced by something else entirely, a cold, terrifying, and absolute rage. The smartphone screen glowed intensely in the pitch-black hallway, casting a cold, icy light across my face as the steady dialing tone echoed in my ear. I had stepped out of my son's bedroom, pulling the wooden door securely shut behind me to ensure he would not hear us. It was nearly 2 in the morning, an hour reserved for emergencies, but the furious pounding in my chest told me this qualified as exactly that. The call connected on the fourth ring. The video feed flickered to life, revealing my father Eric squinting into the camera. He was sitting up against his headboard, illuminated by the harsh glare of a reading lamp. An irritated scowl was etched into his wrinkled features. A second later, my mother Ruth leaned into the frame, adjusting her glasses. Neither of them looked surprised or guilty. They merely looked inconvenienced. "Naomi, do you have any idea what time it is?" Eric grumbled, his voice rough with sleep. I did not offer a greeting. "Did you threaten Tristan?" I asked. My voice was completely flat, devoid of the emotional pleading they were so accustomed to hearing from me. "Did you tell my son that he could no longer call you his grandfather if he refused to hand over his property to Jude?" Ruth let out a sharp scoff, waving her hand casually at the camera lens. "Oh, please, Naomi, stop being so dramatic. You are blowing this entire situation wildly out of proportion, as you always do. We were simply trying to teach the boy a valuable lesson about generosity and family values." "A lesson," I repeated, feeling my fingernails biting into my palms. "You emotionally blackmailed an 8-year-old child. You weaponized your love over a birthday present." Eric leaned closer to the phone. His tone shifted into the familiar condescending register he had used to control me for my entire life. "Listen to yourself right now. You are acting completely irrational. Your sister Brenda is struggling to keep her head above water. Jude has absolutely nothing to his name. Tristan, on the other hand, sits in a bedroom filled with expensive items because you spoil him rotten. He needs to learn how to share. Jude deserves something nice for once." "Those items belong to Tristan," I stated firmly. "They are not yours to promise to someone else." Ruth narrowed her eyes. "If you are going to raise him to be a selfish, entitled little brat exactly like you, then perhaps we do need some serious distance. Family shares everything. Family takes care of their own. Clearly, living in your fancy house has made you forget where you came from." The toxic words hung heavily in the digital space connecting us. A younger, more fragile version of myself would have crumbled right then and there. I would have desperately listed all the rent payments, the medical bills, and the vehicle installments I had covered for them, just to prove I was a good daughter. But standing in that dark corridor, watching the smug, self-righteous expressions painted across their faces, a massive internal shift occurred. I stopped arguing. I did not defend my parenting, and I did not utter another word of protest. In that profound, heavy silence, a crystal-clear realization washed over my entire being. This vicious argument was never actually about a collection of basketball cards. The real issue was that my parents genuinely believed they possessed the supreme, unquestionable right to control, manage, and dictate absolutely everything that belonged to us. The dry, hollow click of the computer mouse echoed in the dim room, blending seamlessly with the steady, exhausted breathing of Tristan, who had finally fallen asleep on my bed. I sat at my small wooden desk with my laptop open, staring directly at the glaring white screen of my online banking portal. My hands were not shaking anymore. The overwhelming surge of anger had entirely evaporated, leaving behind a cold, calculating clarity that I had never experienced before. For a long moment, I simply looked at the extensive list of automated recurring payments scheduled for the upcoming month. I had supported these people with my blood, sweat, and tears, simply because we shared the same bloodline. I had constantly sacrificed my own comfort, picking up grueling weekend shifts and denying myself basic luxuries, all under the misguided belief that family meant unconditional support. But as I listened to the soft, rhythmic breathing of my innocent boy behind me, the ultimate truth crystallized in my mind. The true definition of family never includes deliberately breaking the heart of my only child to satisfy someone else's entitlement. I moved the cursor to the top of the scheduled transfer list. I decided to dismantle their comfortable, fully funded existence piece by piece, starting from the perimeter and working my way straight to the core. First, I hovered over the monthly rent payment designated for my older sister Brenda. For 4 years, I had automatically transferred $1,200 every single month to keep a roof over her head, constantly listening to her endless excuses about finding a stable job. Without a second thought, I clicked the red cancellation button. A small confirmation window popped up on the screen. I confirmed it. Just like that, her free ride instantly vanished. Next on the list was the vehicle financing installment for Eric. My father loved to proudly drive around suburban Portland in a pristine heavy-duty pickup truck that he claimed he needed for imaginary weekend projects. He never mentioned to anyone that his youngest daughter was the one actually paying the $600 monthly note. I navigated to the auto loan portal, unlinked my primary checking account, and officially canceled the upcoming auto draft. He would now have to figure out how to maintain his pride on his own dime. The dismantling process was becoming incredibly therapeutic. I opened a new browser tab and logged into my premium corporate health insurance portal. As a dedicated professional, I had secured a top-tier medical and dental plan, generously adding my parents as dependents to ensure they never had to worry about prescription costs or standard copays. I navigated to the dependent management section. With 2 deliberate clicks, I permanently removed both Eric and Ruth from the comprehensive coverage. Finally, I tackled the shared utilities. I opened my cellular provider application and pulled up the family data plan. I systematically deactivated the phone lines belonging to Brenda, Eric, and Ruth, effectively cutting off their unlimited internet access and cellular service. I did not stop there. I also logged into the internet service provider account, linked to my parents' residential address, and scheduled an immediate disconnection of their high-speed wireless network. As the final confirmation email pinged into my inbox, I leaned back in my wooden chair and let out a long, deep exhale. Every single click of that mouse had physically represented a heavy iron shackle being permanently removed from my shoulders. The suffocating weight of financial abuse that I had carried for an entire decade was completely gone. I closed the sleek laptop screen, the sudden darkness of the room feeling immensely comforting. For the first time in my adult life, my hard-earned money belonged solely to the 2 people in this house who actually deserved it. The rapid chiming of message alerts pulled me from my fitful sleep at 6 o'clock the next morning, exactly on the day of Jude's birthday. I rolled over, rubbing the exhaustion from my eyes, and squinted at the bright screen illuminating the dark bedroom. My notification bar was completely flooded with tags and mentions from various relatives. I unlocked the device and opened my social media application, instantly confronted by a massive, dramatic paragraph prominently posted by my sister Brenda. She had carefully crafted a masterful illusion of absolute victimhood. In her lengthy public statement, she never once mentioned the valuable sports collectibles or the harsh ultimatum given to my child. Instead, she painted a heartbreaking picture of a struggling mother merely trying to give her sweet boy a wonderful celebration, only to be cruelly sabotaged by a heartless, wealthy sister. She vehemently accused me of being a selfish monster who purposely ruined a little boy's special day out of pure spite and unexplained greed. She lamented endlessly about how deeply painful it was to watch family turn their backs on their own flesh and blood. Below her tragic narrative, a chaotic storm of comments was already rapidly brewing. Aunts, uncles, and distant cousins were piling on with angry reactions. They typed out passionate paragraphs offering their deepest sympathies to Brenda and Jude, publicly condemning my alleged disgusting behavior. They sharply questioned my morals and openly criticized my character. I sat up against the headboard and took a slow, deep breath. I did not feel the urge to cry. I felt absolutely no desire to engage in a messy, emotional screaming match over the internet. I just needed to cleanly dismantle the lie. I tapped the comment field and typed out a single calculated response. I wrote clearly and objectively. I explicitly stated that my son was absent from the party because our parents had maliciously cornered an 8-year-old child, threatening to completely sever their relationship with him if he refused to hand over his most prized personal property. Then I directly addressed her ridiculous accusations of greed. I listed the exact financial figures for the entire extended family to finally see. I typed out the $1,200 I generously provided for her rent every single month. I listed the $600 for our father's vehicle installment. I mentioned the comprehensive medical insurance premiums and the unlimited cellular data plans I had fully funded for years. I concluded the comment with one final, undeniable declaration: I possess the official bank receipts for every single transaction, and I will never again finance the lives of adults who emotionally manipulate my only child. I hit send, tossed the phone onto the mattress, and calmly walked to the kitchen to brew coffee. I did not pace around the room waiting for a digital war to erupt. When I finally sat down at the kitchen island with my warm mug and refreshed the application, the digital landscape had drastically altered. Brenda's entire post was completely gone. She had hastily deleted the entire thread to quickly bury her massive humiliation before anyone else could read the factual financial breakdown. The loud, righteous public outrage had simply evaporated into thin air. The immediate aftermath was not some cinematic victory. It was just a heavy, uncomfortable quiet. Over the next hour, my phone chimed softly with 3 private direct messages. An aunt and a couple of cousins sent awkward, embarrassed apologies, quietly admitting they had spoken out of turn without knowing the actual facts. The rest of the relatives, the ones who had so eagerly grabbed their pitchforks at dawn, cowardly retreated into absolute silence. No one dared to challenge the raw truth. The cold, hard reality of my financial sacrifice had completely suffocated her fake victim narrative. Dozens of missed calls and a relentless stream of toxic text messages continuously lit up my phone screen throughout the following weeks. The sudden loss of their monthly allowance had sent my relatives into an absolute frenzy. Eric, Ruth, and Brenda took turns bombarding my device with aggressive demands and vicious insults. They desperately blamed me for their massive public humiliation, completely refusing to acknowledge their own despicable actions. Their messages shifted wildly from furious threats demanding I immediately reinstate their canceled services to pitiful manipulative pleas about Brenda facing an upcoming eviction. When I firmly maintained my silence and blocked their phone numbers, their desperation officially crossed the line. The situation reached its ultimate boiling point on a quiet Sunday afternoon. A violent, rhythmic pounding suddenly echoed through my peaceful house, rattling the front windows. I walked over to the digital security monitor mounted on the wall. The camera feed displayed Eric, Ruth, and Brenda standing aggressively on my front porch. Brenda was frantically waving a past-due utility bill, while my father slammed his heavy fist against the solid oak door, loudly demanding that I open up and show them some basic respect. Tristan peeked out from the hallway, his eyes wide with rising panic. I gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, promising him that everything was perfectly safe. I did not walk toward the entryway. I did not unlock the deadbolt. Instead, I simply pressed the microphone icon on my security application. My voice projected through the outdoor speaker, echoing across the porch with cold, unwavering authority. "You are trespassing on private property," I announced. "You have exactly 60 seconds to get off my driveway and leave this neighborhood, or I will immediately dispatch the police." The 3 of them froze in their tracks, utterly shocked by the harsh reality that their favorite financial safety net was officially fighting back. Eric's face turned bright red with fury, but the unmistakable threat of law enforcement finally broke his stubborn pride. After a tense, humiliating moment, they turned around and marched angrily back to their vehicle. The very next morning, I retained a local attorney and officially served my parents and sister with a legally binding cease and desist order. I established an unbreakable iron boundary. There would be absolutely no visitation rights, no supervised dinners, and zero chance for any future reconciliation. The heavy, toxic chapter of my life was permanently closed. Without that massive financial drain, our world transformed. Just 2 months later, using the money I had saved from cutting them off, Tristan and I sat in premium seats at a professional basketball game, cheering freely and embracing our incredibly bright, peaceful new reality. The scene fades and the voice of the host takes over. Wow, what an incredibly powerful and necessary journey. Naomi's story serves as a profound reminder that sharing a bloodline does not grant anyone a free pass to trample over your personal boundaries. Financial abuse frequently hides behind the sacred mask of family loyalty, but exploitation remains exploitation regardless of who is cashing the checks. The absolute most crucial takeaway from this situation is that the supreme responsibility of any parent is to fiercely protect the mental and emotional safety of their child. Sometimes effectively shielding your little ones from toxic manipulation means firmly locking the door on your own parents. Breaking generational cycles of guilt requires immense courage, but the ultimate reward is a lifetime of peace for the next generation. Remember, you never have to set yourself on fire simply to keep abusive relatives warm.